My name is Daniel, and I am a marine biologist with a penchant for exploring the unknown. One legend that has fascinated me since childhood is that of the Loch Ness Monster, an elusive creature said to inhabit the deep, dark waters of Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. Stories of this mysterious being, affectionately known as Nessie, have captivated imaginations for generations. The thought of an undiscovered creature living in one of the largest and deepest freshwater lakes in the world was too compelling to resist. In the summer of 2023, I decided to embark on an expedition to Loch Ness to uncover the truth behind the legend. Armed with state-of-the-art sonar equipment, underwater cameras, and a team of dedicated researchers, I was determined to solve the mystery once and for all. Our base of operations was a small cabin on the shore of the loch, providing easy access to the water and a perfect vantage point for observations. The first few days of our expedition were spent familiarizing ourselves with the loch's vast expanse. Loch Ness is over 20 miles long, mile wide, and more than 700 feet deep in places. The sheer size of the loch made it an ideal hiding place for a creature like Nessie, and its murky waters added to the challenge of finding concrete evidence. We began by interviewing locals who claimed to have seen the monster. One such person was Angus, a fisherman who had lived on the loch his entire life. His encounter had occurred nearly a decade ago, but the memory was still fresh in his mind. It was early morning, and the loch was as still as glass, Angus recounted, his weathered face showing a mix of awe and apprehension. I saw a long neck and a small head rise out of the water, followed by a series of humps. It moved gracefully, like a serpent, before disappearing into the depths. I've never seen anything like it before or since. Angus's description matched many other accounts, depicting a large, serpentine creature with a long neck and multiple humps. While skeptics dismiss these sightings as misidentifications of common animals or floating debris, the consistency of the reports suggested that there might be something more to the legend. We deployed our sonar equipment, scanning the depths of the loch for any signs of unusual activity. The sonar readings revealed several large, unexplained objects moving through the water, but capturing clear images was proving difficult due to the loch's turbid conditions. Frustration began to set in, but we pressed on, knowing that perseverance was key to uncovering the truth. On the 7th day of our expedition, we had a breakthrough. Our sonar detected a large object moving at a depth of around 400 feet. Excitement surged through our team as we readied the underwater cameras and lights, lowering them into the water near the area of the sonar contact. As the cameras descended into the dark abyss, we watched the live feed with bated breath. At first, the screen showed only murky water and occasional schools of fish. But then, something massive swam into view, a long, sinuous shape that moved with an almost otherworldly grace. The creature's body was covered in what appeared to be smooth, dark skin, and its movements were both powerful and fluid. We managed to capture several minutes of footage before the creature vanished into the darkness. Reviewing the footage, we were stunned. The creature bore a striking resemblance to the descriptions of Nessie: long neck, multiple humps, and a serpentine body. This was the most compelling evidence yet, and it reignited our determination to document the existence of the Loch Ness Monster. As news of our findings spread, media outlets from around the world descended on Loch Ness, eager to see the footage and hear our story. The interest was overwhelming, but it also brought a level of scrutiny and skepticism that we hadn't anticipated. Some experts argued that the creature in the footage could be a large eel or a misidentified species of fish, while others suggested it might be a hoax. Undeterred, we continued our investigation, conducting further sonar scans and deploying additional cameras in different parts of the loch. Each night, we reviewed the footage, hoping for another glimpse of the elusive creature. Our persistence paid off when, on the 12th night, we captured even clearer images of the creature swimming near the surface. This new footage showed the creature in greater detail, its elongated body, the way it undulated through the water, and the distinct humps that had become synonymous with Nessie. The evidence was mounting, and it was becoming harder for skeptics to dismiss our findings. We presented our data at a press conference, sharing the sonar readings, underwater footage, and eyewitness testimonies. The response was mixed, with some scientists expressing cautious optimism and others remaining firmly skeptical. But for us, the evidence spoke for itself. The Loch Ness Monster was real, and we had the proof. Our expedition had not only reignited the world's fascination with Nessie, but also highlighted the importance of preserving Loch Ness's unique ecosystem. The potential discovery of a new species underscored the need for further research and conservation efforts to protect the loch and its inhabitants. As we packed up our equipment and prepared to leave Loch Ness, I reflected on the journey we had undertaken. The search for Nessie had been more than just a quest to solve a mystery. It had been an exploration of the unknown, a testament to human curiosity and the desire to understand the world around us. The Loch Ness Monster had captured our imaginations for generations. And now, thanks to our efforts, it had taken a step closer to reality. Back at the university, I continued to study the footage and data we had collected, collaborating with other marine biologists and cryptozoologists to analyze our findings. The search for Nessie had opened new avenues of research and inspired a new generation of scientists to look beyond the surface and explore the depths of our planet's unexplored waters. The Loch Ness Monster remained an enigma, a symbol of the mysteries that still await us in the natural world. Our journey had shown that sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries are found in the most unexpected places. The legend of Nessie would continue to captivate and inspire, a reminder that there is always more to discover, if only we have the courage to seek it out. My name is Nathan, and I am a park ranger stationed in the dense forests of northern Minnesota. Growing up, I had heard tales of the Wendigo, an insatiable, cannibalistic creature that roamed the woods, preying on anyone unfortunate enough to cross its path. The stories were a staple of local folklore, meant to keep children from wandering too far into the wilderness. As I grew older, I dismissed these tales as mere superstition, the product of overactive imaginations. However, my skepticism was challenged in the winter of 2022, when a series of strange and unsettling events began to unfold in the park. Reports of missing hikers, eerie howls at night, and sightings of a gaunt, skeletal figure in the woods started to surface. The park had always been a place of natural beauty and tranquility, but now it was shrouded in an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. My first encounter with the Wendigo occurred late one evening while I was patrolling the northern sector of the park. The air was crisp and cold, the ground covered in a thick blanket of snow. The full moon cast an ethereal glow over the landscape, illuminating the frosty trees and the winding trails. As I walked, my flashlight scanning the shadows, I heard a faint, haunting whisper carried on the wind. "Help me." The voice was barely audible, but it sent a chill down my spine. I stopped in my tracks, straining to listen. The whisper came again, this time clearer and more desperate. Following the sound, I ventured deeper into the woods, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The whisper led me to a small clearing, where I found a man crouched beside a tree, his eyes wide with terror. "Please, help me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "It's coming for me." I approached cautiously, my flashlight revealing his gaunt, emaciated figure. He looked as if he hadn't eaten in days, his clothes tattered and his skin pale. I knelt beside him, trying to calm him down and get him to explain what had happened. "It's the Wendigo," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "I saw it. It's real." Before I could ask any more questions, the man let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed. I radioed for backup and an ambulance, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone. His body was ice cold, and his eyes were frozen in a look of sheer terror. The paramedics were baffled, unable to determine a cause of death. Shaken by the encounter, I decided to investigate the man's claims further. I delved into the park's history, uncovering old reports of mysterious disappearances and sightings of a creature matching the Wendigo's description. The accounts were eerily consistent. People would hear whispers in the woods, feel an overwhelming sense of dread, and then vanish without a trace. Determined to find answers, I spent the next few weeks patrolling the park more frequently, especially at night. I spoke with locals and other rangers, gathering as much information as I could. The more I learned, the more I realized that the Wendigo was not just a legend, but a very real and dangerous entity. One evening, as I was reviewing my notes in the ranger station, I received a distress call from a hiker named Emily who had ventured into the park alone. She was lost and terrified, claiming that something was stalking her. I grabbed my gear and set out to find her, following the coordinates she had provided. The night was bitterly cold, and the forest seemed to close in around me as I made my way through the snow. I found Emily near the edge of a frozen lake, huddled under a tree. Her face was pale with fear, and she kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting something to emerge from the darkness. I reassured her and guided her back towards the ranger station, but as we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Halfway back, we heard a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the trees. Emily's grip on my arm tightened, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. We quickened our pace, the growl growing louder and more menacing. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, skeletal being with hollow eyes and sharp, elongated teeth. The Wendigo. It moved with a terrifying speed, its bony limbs seeming to glide over the snow. Emily screamed, and I drew my flashlight, shining it directly at the creature. For a brief moment, it recoiled, hissing and shielding its eyes. Seizing the opportunity, I urged Emily to run, and we sprinted through the forest, the Wendigo's growls echoing behind us. We reached the ranger station, slamming the door shut and barricading it with whatever we could find. The Wendigo's growls faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Emily was shaking, her eyes filled with tears. I did my best to comfort her, but I couldn't ignore the dread that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The Wendigo was real, and it was hunting us. Over the next few days, I gathered a group of experienced rangers and locals to form a search party. We needed to track the Wendigo and find a way to stop it before it claimed more lives. Equipped with rifles, traps, and survival gear, we ventured into the heart of the forest, determined to face the creature head-on. Our search led us to an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. The place was decrepit, its windows shattered and its walls covered in strange, dark stains. Inside, we found signs of a struggle, broken furniture, scattered belongings, and claw marks etched into the wood. It was clear that the Wendigo had been here, and it was using the cabin as a lair. As night fell, we set up a perimeter around the cabin, using motion sensors and cameras to monitor any activity. The air was thick with tension, and every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig set our nerves on edge. We waited in silence, our eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the creature. Hours passed, and just as we were beginning to think the Wendigo wouldn't show, the motion sensors were triggered. The cameras captured a blurry figure moving towards the cabin, its eyes glowing in the night. We readied our rifles, the tension palpable. The Wendigo emerged from the shadows, its skeletal frame illuminated by the moonlight. It let out a bone-chilling howl, and we opened fire. Bullets tore through the night, striking the creature, but it barely flinched. It lunged at us with terrifying speed, its claws slashing through the air. The battle was fierce and chaotic, but eventually, we managed to drive the Wendigo back into the cabin. We set fire to the structure, watching as the flames consumed the old wood and the creature within. Its howls of agony echoed through the forest, slowly fading into silence. In the aftermath, we searched the ashes for any remains, but there was nothing left of the Wendigo. The forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. We had defeated the creature, but the experience left a mark on all of us. Back at the ranger station, We shared our story with the authorities and the media. The tale of the Wendigo's terror and our battle against it spread quickly, capturing the imagination of people far and wide. Some were skeptical, dismissing it as a fabrication or a hallucination brought on by the cold. But for those of us who had faced the creature, the memory was all too real. The legend of the Wendigo would live on, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the woods and the courage it takes to confront it. As for me, I returned to my duties as a park ranger, forever changed by the encounter. The forest was no longer just a place of beauty and tranquility, it was a realm of mystery and danger, where legends walked among us. I remained vigilant, always aware of the whispers in the wind and the shadows in the trees. The Wendigo's whisper had haunted my dreams, but it had also awakened a sense of purpose. My duty was to protect the park and its visitors, to stand guard against the unknown, and to honor the bravery of those who had faced the darkness with me. The Wendigo may have been defeated, but its presence would always be felt, a silent guardian of the forest's secrets. And as long as I walked those trails, I would carry the memory of that fateful winter night, when the Wendigo's whisper led me into the heart of fear, and showed me the true meaning of courage. My name is Alex, and I have spent most of my life exploring the dense, enigmatic forests of New Jersey's Pine Barrens. As a wildlife biologist, I've always been fascinated by the region's rich biodiversity and the mysteries hidden within its sprawling woods. But one legend has intrigued me more than any other: the tale of the Jersey Devil. According to local lore, the Jersey Devil is a fearsome creature with the head of a horse, the wings of a bat, and the body of a kangaroo. It's said to have been born to a woman named Mother Leeds in 1735, cursed to live as a monstrous beast. For centuries, sightings and encounters with this creature have been reported, instilling fear and fascination in equal measure. In the autumn of 2023, I decided to conduct a detailed study of the Pine Barrens, focusing specifically on areas where sightings of the Jersey Devil had been most frequent. I was determined to uncover the truth behind the legend, armed with modern technology and a healthy dose of skepticism. Joining me were my colleagues, Dr. Emily Carter, an expert in cryptozoology, and Michael Ramirez, a skilled tracker and outdoorsman. Our base camp was set up near the village of Leeds Point, where the legend originated. The locals were friendly but cautious, sharing their own stories and warnings about venturing too deep into the woods. Despite their apprehensions, we were excited to begin our investigation. Our first few days were spent setting up trail cameras and recording equipment throughout the forest. We also conducted interviews with residents who claimed to have encountered the Jersey Devil. One of the most compelling accounts came from an elderly man named Tom, who had lived in the area his entire life. "I was just a boy when I saw it," Tom recalled, his eyes reflecting the vivid memory. "It was late at night, and I heard this unearthly scream coming from the woods. I looked out my window and saw this massive, winged creature with glowing red eyes. It flew past the house and disappeared into the trees. I've never seen anything like it before or since." Tom's description matched many other reports: glowing eyes, large wings, and a terrifying scream that echoed through the night. While skeptics dismiss these sightings as misidentifications of known animals or pure imagination, the consistency and sincerity of the accounts were hard to ignore. One night, about a week into our expedition, we experienced something that shook our skepticism to the core. It was just after midnight, and Emily and I were reviewing footage from our trail cameras, when we heard a series of loud, piercing screams coming from the forest. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard: primal, chilling, and full of menace. We grabbed our gear and followed the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The screams grew louder and more intense as we ventured deeper into the woods, accompanied by the rustling of leaves and the snapping of twigs. Suddenly, the forest fell silent, the air thick with tension. As we stood there, straining to listen, Michael pointed to a clearing up ahead. We cautiously approached, our senses on high alert. In the center of the clearing, illuminated by the moonlight, was a set of large, clawed footprints. The prints were unlike anything we had ever seen, massive, with elongated toes and deep impressions in the soil. Emily quickly took photographs and measurements, her excitement barely contained. "These are definitely not from any known animal in this region," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. "We might be on the verge of something incredible." We followed the trail of footprints, which led us to an old, abandoned cabin deep in the woods. The structure was dilapidated, its windows shattered and its wooden walls covered in ivy. Inside, we found evidence that suggested the cabin had been used recently: discarded food wrappers, a makeshift bed, and a notebook filled with strange drawings and cryptic notes. The drawings depicted a creature that matched the description of the Jersey Devil: bat-like wings, a horse-like head, and a serpentine tail. The notes were more disturbing, detailing sightings, encounters, and theories about the creature's origins and habits. It was clear that whoever had stayed in the cabin had been obsessed with the Jersey Devil. As we examined the cabin, we heard the screams again, this time much closer. The sound was accompanied by a strong, foul odor that filled the air. We hurried outside, our flashlights scanning the darkness. The creature's outline became visible in the beam of Michael's flashlight: a large, winged figure perched in a tree, its eyes glowing red. Before we could react, the creature let out another scream and launched itself into the air, disappearing into the night. We stood there in stunned silence, the reality of what we had just witnessed sinking in. The Jersey Devil was real, and it was far more terrifying than any of us had imagined. Over the next few days, we continued our investigation, documenting every piece of evidence and trying to learn more about the creature's behavior. We set up additional cameras and sensors, hoping to capture clearer footage. Our efforts paid off when one of our cameras recorded a video of the Jersey Devil flying low over the forest, its wings beating with incredible speed and power. The footage was remarkable, providing the clearest images yet of the creature. It showed a being that defied conventional classification: earthy bird nor mammal, but something entirely different. The video sparked a wave of media interest, drawing attention from scientists, cryptozoologists, and the general public. Despite the excitement, we were acutely aware of the dangers posed by the Jersey Devil. Its presence in the Pine Barrens had instilled fear in the local community, and we felt a responsibility to ensure that our research did not lead to unnecessary risk or harm. We worked closely with local authorities, sharing our findings and coordinating efforts to monitor and study the creature from a safe distance. As winter approached, we decided to wrap up our fieldwork and return to our respective institutions to analyze the data we had collected. Our findings were published in several scientific journals, sparking debates and discussions about the nature of the Jersey Devil and its place in the natural world. For me, the experience was transformative. The Jersey Devil had gone from being a childhood legend to a subject of serious scientific inquiry, challenging my understanding of the world and expanding my sense of what is possible. The Pine Barrens, with its dense forests and hidden secrets, remained a place of wonder and mystery. Years later, I still returned to the Pine Barrens, drawn by the allure of its enigmatic beauty and the possibility of another encounter with the Jersey Devil. The creature's presence continues to captivate my imagination, a reminder that there are still mysteries in the world waiting to be discovered. The legend of the Jersey Devil lives on, not just in the stories told around campfires, but in the ongoing quest for knowledge and understanding. It serves as a symbol of the unknown, a testament to the enduring power of myth and the relentless pursuit of truth. And so, I continue my work, exploring the hidden corners of the natural world, driven by the same curiosity and wonder that led me to the Pine Barrens in search of the Jersey Devil. The journey is never ending, and the discoveries are limitless, for there will always be new mysteries to unravel and new stories to tell. My name is Emma, and I am an ornithologist who has spent years studying the majestic birds of North America. My passion for birds began in childhood, inspired by the diverse avian life that populated the forests near my home in Washington state. Over the years, I have encountered many rare and elusive species, but none has intrigued me more than the legendary thunderbird. The thunderbird is a creature of Native American mythology, described as a massive bird with the power to create thunder and lightning with the beating of its wings. Stories of the thunderbird have been passed down through generations, often regarded as mere folklore. However, occasional sightings and encounters with enormous birds have kept the legend alive, sparking curiosity and speculation. In the spring of 2023, received a call from a colleague, Dr. James Harris, who had been studying bird migration patterns in the remote forests of British Columbia. James was an experienced field biologist, and his excitement was palpable, as he described recent sightings of an unusually large bird that fit the description of the thunderbird. Intrigued, I agreed to join him on an expedition to investigate these reports. Our journey began in the small town of Bella, nestled in a valley surrounded by towering mountains and dense forests. The locals were familiar with the legend of the thunderbird and shared their own stories of sightings and strange occurrences. Their tales were filled with reverence and caution, warning us of the bird's immense power and mysterious nature. Equipped with cameras, binoculars, and recording equipment, James and I set out into the wilderness, guided by the reports of recent sightings. The terrain was rugged and challenging, but the beauty of the landscape was awe-inspiring. As we hiked deeper into the forest, the calls of birds echoed through the trees, a symphony of nature that filled me with a sense of wonder and anticipation. Our first encounter with the thunderbird occurred on the third day of our expedition. We were resting near a pristine lake, its surface reflecting the surrounding mountains and the clear blue sky. Suddenly, a shadow passed over us, and the air was filled with a low, rumbling sound. Looking up, we saw a massive bird soaring high above, its wingspan stretching far wider than any eagle or hawk I had ever seen. The thunderbird circled the lake, its powerful wings creating gusts of wind that rippled the water's surface. James and I watched in stunned silence, our cameras capturing every moment. The bird's feathers were dark and glossy, its eyes piercing and intelligent. As it flew overhead, I felt a mixture of awe and trepidation, aware that we were witnessing something truly extraordinary. Over the next few days, we tracked the thunderbird, documenting its movements and behavior. The bird seemed to favor the high mountain ridges, often disappearing into the clouds, only to reappear moments later with a flash of lightning and a roll of thunder. Its presence had a profound impact on the environment, as if the very elements responded to its commands. One evening, as we camped near a rocky outcrop, we heard the distant sound of thunder, followed by a series of loud, piercing cries. We grabbed our gear and followed the sound, navigating the rugged terrain with urgency. As we reached the top of a ridge, we saw the thunderbird perched on a cliff edge, its wings outstretched and its head held high. The bird's cries echoed through the valley, a powerful and haunting call that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the land. As we approached cautiously, the thunderbird turned its gaze towards us, its eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. For a moment, it felt as if we were in the presence of a being that transcended the natural world, a guardian of the skies and a symbol of untamed power. Despite its formidable appearance, the thunderbird did not display any aggression. Instead, it watched us with a calm and measured demeanor, as if assessing our intentions. We took this opportunity to observe and document the bird, noting its physical characteristics and behavior. Its feathers shimmered in the fading light, creating an almost ethereal glow. As night fell, the thunderbird took flight, disappearing into the darkness with a final, thunderous call. We returned to our camp, exhilarated by the encounter and eager to analyze our findings. Over the next few days, we continued to track the bird, learning more about its hunting habits, flight patterns, and interactions with the environment. Our research revealed that the thunderbird was not just a solitary creature, but part of a small, elusive population that inhabited the remote mountain regions. These birds were incredibly intelligent and seemed to possess a deep connection to the natural elements, using their powerful wings to create storms and navigate the treacherous terrain. One afternoon, as we observed the thunderbird from a hidden vantage point, we witnessed a remarkable display of its power. The sky had grown dark with storm clouds, and the air was charged with electricity. The thunderbird flew high above, its wings beating rhythmically as it called out to the approaching storm. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck nearby, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The bird seemed to revel in the chaos, its cries mingling with the roar of the storm. This display reinforced the belief that the thunderbird was more than just a bird. It was a force of nature, capable of commanding the elements with its presence. The experience left us in awe, deepening our respect for these magnificent creatures and their place in the natural world. As our expedition drew to a close, we compiled our data and prepared to share our findings with the scientific community. The evidence we had gathered, photos, videos, and detailed observations provided compelling support for the existence of the thunderbird. Our research not only confirmed the legends, but also offered new insights into the behavior and ecology of these extraordinary birds. Back in Bella Coola, we shared our discoveries with the locals, who received the news with a mix of pride and vindication. The legend of the thunderbird had always been a part of their heritage, and our findings affirmed their belief in the creature's existence. We also collaborated with conservationists to develop strategies for protecting the thunderbird's habitat, ensuring that these majestic birds could continue to thrive in the wild. For me, the expedition was a transformative experience. The thunderbird had captured my imagination and challenged my understanding of the natural world. It reminded me that there are still mysteries to be uncovered, and that the boundaries between myth and reality are often more fluid than we realize. As I continue my work as an ornithologist, I carry with me the memory of the thunderbird and the lessons it taught me. The bird's shadow remains a symbol of the untamed beauty and power of nature, a reminder that there are forces in this world that transcend our understanding and inspire us to seek out the unknown. The thunderbird's legend lives on, not just in the stories of the past, but in the ongoing quest for knowledge and discovery. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of nature and the limitless possibilities that await those who dare to explore its mysteries. And so, my journey continues, driven by the same curiosity and wonder that led me to the thunderbird. The quest for understanding is never-ending, and the discoveries are limitless. For there will always be new mysteries to unravel and new stories to tell. My name is Alex, and I've been a freelance journalist for most of my career. Over the years, I've covered a wide range of stories, from political scandals to human interest pieces. But nothing could have prepared me for the assignment I took in the fall of 2023, which led me to the small town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and into the heart of a chilling local legend, the Dogman of Bray Road. The Dogman, sometimes described as a half-man, half-dog creature, has been the subject of numerous sightings and reports in Elkhorn and the surrounding areas since the late 1980s. The creature is said to be around 7 feet tall, with a muscular build, canine features, and glowing eyes. Locals have shared stories of terrifying encounters, but concrete evidence has always been elusive. I first heard about the Dogman while researching cryptid sightings for a series of articles on unexplained phenomena. Intrigued by the consistent reports and the palpable fear in the witnesses' accounts, I decided to travel to Elkhorn to investigate further. I wanted to separate fact from fiction and, if possible, uncover the truth behind the legend. I arrived in Elkhorn on a crisp October afternoon. The town had an air of small-town charm, with its historic buildings and friendly residents. However, there was also an undercurrent of unease, especially when I mentioned my interest in the Dogman. Most people were reluctant to talk about it, either dismissing it as a myth or expressing genuine fear. My first lead came from a local farmer named Tom, who had reported several sightings of the creature near his property on Bray Road. Tom was a no-nonsense type of guy, and I could tell he was still shaken by his encounters. He agreed to meet me at a local diner to share his story. Over coffee and pie, Tom recounted his first encounter with the Dogman. It was late one night, and he was driving home along Bray Road when he saw a large, dark figure standing by the roadside. At first, he thought it was a deer, but as he got closer, he realized it was something far more sinister. The creature had the body of a man, but the head and limbs of a dog. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, and it emitted a low growl that sent chills down his spine. Tom sped away, but the memory of that night haunted him. He told me about other sightings: 2 farm animals found mutilated, strange tracks in the mud, and eerie howls that echoed through the night. Tom believed the Dogman was real, and that it was a threat to anyone who crossed its path. He urged me to be careful if I intended to investigate further. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to spend a few nights camping near Bray Road. Armed with a camera, a notebook, and a sense of adventure, I set up my tent in a secluded spot not far from Tom's farm. The first night was uneventful, save for the usual sounds of the forest rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the occasional hoot of an owl. The second night, however, was different. I was sitting by the campfire reviewing my notes, when I heard a series of low growls coming from the woods. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the darkness. At first, I saw nothing, but then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. A large, shadowy figure darted between the trees, moving with an unnatural speed and grace. I raised my camera, hoping to capture a clear image, but the creature was too fast. It circled my campsite, staying just beyond the reach of the firelight. I could hear its heavy breathing and see the glint of its eyes in the darkness. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stay calm and focused. Suddenly, the Dogman emerged from the shadows, standing just a few yards away. It was even more terrifying up, colossal and muscular, with fur covering its body and a snarling, wolf-like face. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence, and it bared its sharp teeth in a menacing grin. I snapped several photos, my hands trembling, but the flash seemed to enrage the creature. It let out a deafening howl and lunged towards me. I stumbled backward, tripping over a log and falling to the ground. As the Dogman closed in, I braced myself for the worst, but at the last moment, it stopped, sniffing the air as if sensing something. Then, without warning, it turned and disappeared into the woods. I sat there, stunned and shaking, trying to process what had just happened. I knew I had come face to face with the Dogman, and I had the photos to prove it. But more than that, I had felt its presence, a dark, primal force that defied explanation. The next day, I returned to town and shared my experience with Tom and a few other locals. They were both amazed and horrified by my encounter, but they believed my story and the evidence I had gathered. The photos were grainy and indistinct, but they clearly showed a large, humanoid figure with canine features. My encounter with the Dogman left me with more questions than answers. What was this creature? Where did it come from? And why did it seem to haunt the area around Bray Road? Determined to find out more, I delved into local history and folklore, uncovering stories of similar sightings dating back to the early settlers. Some believed the Dogman was a supernatural being, a guardian of the forest that punished those who encroached on its territory. Others thought it might be a cryptid, a yet-to-be-discovered species that had managed to elude scientific scrutiny. I also reached out to other witnesses, collecting their stories and piecing together a pattern of sightings and encounters. Many of them described the same sense of being watched, the same glowing eyes and eerie howls. Some had even found claw marks on their property, evidence of the Dogman's territorial behavior. As I compiled my research, I realized that the Dogman was more than just a local legend. It was a phenomenon that had touched the lives of many people in the area. The fear and fascination it inspired were real, and the need for answers was palpable. In the months that followed, I continued my investigation, collaborating with cryptozoologists, folklore experts, and local historians. We shared our findings and theories, hoping to shed light on the mystery of the Dogman. While we didn't find definitive proof of its existence, we gathered enough evidence to suggest that something strange and unexplained was happening in the forests of Wisconsin. My experiences in Elkhorn changed me in profound ways. They reminded me of the power of the unknown and the importance of keeping an open mind. The Dogman of Bray Road remains an enigma, a creature that straddles the line between myth and reality. But its story continues to captivate and intrigue, a testament to the enduring allure of the mysterious and the unexplained. As a journalist, I've learned that the world is full of stories that defy easy explanation. Stories that challenge our understanding and push the boundaries of what we consider possible. The Dogman is one of those stories, a reminder that there are still mysteries out there waiting to be discovered. And so, my journey continues, driven by the same curiosity and wonder that led me to the Dogman. The quest for understanding is never-ending, and the discoveries are limitless. For there will always be new mysteries to unravel and new stories to tell. My name is Claire, and I'm an anthropologist specializing in folklore and legends. My research has taken me to many fascinating places, from remote villages in Africa to the bustling cities of Europe. In the spring of 2024, I found myself drawn to a small town in Wisconsin, intrigued by the numerous reports of a mysterious creature known as the Beast of Bray Road. The Beast of Bray Road is often described as a large, wolf-like creature, capable of walking on two legs. It has been the subject of numerous sightings in Elkhorn and the surrounding areas since the late 1930s. The creature is said to have glowing red eyes, sharp claws, and an imposing stature that strikes fear into those who encounter it. I first learned about the beast while attending a folklore conference. A fellow researcher, Dr. Emily Harris, mentioned the creature during her presentation on North American cryptids. Her talk piqued my interest, and I decided to visit Elkhorn to conduct my own investigation. I arrived in Elkhorn on a warm April afternoon. The town, with its quaint streets and friendly locals, seemed an unlikely setting for such a terrifying legend. However, as I began to talk to residents, I quickly realized that the Beast of Bray Road was more than just a campfire story. Many locals had experienced strange encounters or knew someone who had seen the creature. One of my first contacts was a woman named Linda, who had lived in Elkhorn her entire life. She agreed to meet me at a local coffee shop to share her story. As we sat sipping our drinks, Linda recounted a night she would never forget. It was late October, and Linda was driving home along Bray Road after visiting a friend. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. As she rounded a bend, she saw a large, dark figure crouch by the roadside, seemingly gnawing on something. At first, she thought it was a bear, but as she slowed down, she realized it was something far more sinister. The creature stood up on its hind legs, revealing a towering, muscular form covered in thick fur. Its eyes glowed a menacing red, and it bared its sharp teeth in a snarl. Linda froze in terror, unable to move or look away. The beast stared at her for a few moments before turning and disappearing into the woods. Linda's story sent chills down my spine. She described the encounter with such vivid detail that it was hard to dismiss it as mere imagination. Intrigued and a bit unnerved, I decided to explore Bray Road myself, hoping to gather more evidence and perhaps even catch a glimpse of the beast. That evening, I drove out to Bray Road, parking my car at a small pull-off near the area where Linda had seen the creature. The sun was setting, and the forest was bathed in a golden light. I set up my camera and audio equipment, prepared to document any unusual activity. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. I heard the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, and the distant howl of a coyote. Despite the normalcy of these sounds, An undercurrent of tension filled the air, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Hours passed, and I began to feel the weight of fatigue. Just as I was about to pack up and call it a night, I heard a low growl coming from the woods. My heart raced as I scanned the darkness with my flashlight. At first, I saw nothing, but then, caught a glimpse of Mokele-Mbembe, large, shadowy figure moving between the trees. I held my breath, my hand steady on the camera, hoping to capture the elusive creature. The beast emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing a fierce red. It was just as Linda had described, muscular, and covered in thick fur. It moved with a predatory grace, its gaze fixed on me. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The beast and I locked eyes, and I felt a primal fear grip me. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the creature disappeared into the forest, leaving me breathless and shaken. I returned to town the next day, eager to share my experience with Dr. Harris and other researchers. My footage, though grainy and indistinct, clearly showed a large, bipedal creature with glowing eyes. It was the closest anyone had come to capturing evidence of the Beast of Bray Road. In the days that followed, I continued my investigation, interviewing more locals and exploring the history of the area. I learned that sightings of the beast dated back to the early settlers, who spoke of a wolf man that prowled the woods, preying on livestock and frightening anyone who ventured too close. I also uncovered old newspaper articles and historical records that mentioned strange occurrences in the region, disappearances, mysterious deaths, and sightings of a large, wolf-like creature. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that the Beast of Bray Road was not just a myth, but a real, albeit elusive, entity. My research led me to a local historian named Jacob, who had spent years studying the folklore and legends of the area. Jacob invited me to his home, where he shared his extensive collection of documents, photographs, and artifacts related to the beast. Jacob believed that the Beast of Bray Road was a cryptid, a creature that science had yet to discover. He theorized that the beast was a relic of a bygone era, a survivor of a species that had once roamed North America, but had since become exceedingly rare. He also suggested that the beast's ability to evade capture and remain hidden was a testament to its intelligence and adaptability. As I delved deeper into the mystery, I began to piece together a picture of the beast's behavior and habitat. It seemed to favor areas with dense forest cover, abundant prey, and minimal human activity. The sightings often occurred during the full moon, leading some to speculate that the beast's behavior was influenced by lunar cycles. Determined to gather more evidence, I organized a series of night expeditions with the help of local volunteers. Armed with cameras, audio equipment, and night vision goggles, we patrolled the woods around Bray Road, hoping to capture definitive proof of the beast's existence. On one of these expeditions, we had a breakthrough. As we were setting up our equipment near a clearing, we heard a series of low growls and the sound of something moving through the underbrush. We held our breath, straining to see in the dim light. Suddenly, the beast appeared, emerging from the shadows with a fluid, almost airy grace. It was larger than I had imagined, its eyes glowing a fierce red. We watched in awe as it sniffed the air, its gaze scanning the area as if sensing our presence. For a moment, it seemed to consider us, then turned and disappeared into the forest. The footage we captured that night was our clearest yet. It showed the beast in startling detail, its powerful build and canine features unmistakable. We were elated, convinced that we had finally gathered enough evidence to prove the beast's existence. Our findings sparked a wave of interest and excitement, attracting attention from cryptozoologists, media outlets, and curious onlookers. The Beast of Bray Road became a subject of national fascination, and Elkhorn found itself in the spotlight. Despite the newfound attention, the beast remained elusive. Sightings continued, but the creature seemed to avoid direct contact, maintaining its mysterious aura. Some locals were thrilled by the attention, while others were wary, fearing that increased activity might provoke the beast or disrupt the delicate balance of their quiet town. As for me, my time in Elkhorn was both thrilling and humbling. I had come face to face with the creature that defied explanation, a living testament to the mysteries that still exist in our world. The Beast of Bray Road was a reminder that there are still many wonders to be discovered, and that the unknown can be both terrifying and awe-inspiring. I left Elkhorn with a deeper appreciation for the power of folklore and the enduring allure of the unexplained. The Beast of Bray Road continues to captivate and intrigue, a symbol of the mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of our understanding. And though I may never fully unravel its secrets, the journey to uncover them has been an adventure I will never forget. My name is Jake, and I've always been fascinated by the paranormal. Growing up in the Southwest, I heard many tales of strange creatures and ghostly apparitions. But none were more terrifying than the legend of the Skinwalker. A creature from Navajo folklore, the Skinwalker is said to be a witch capable of transforming into any animal they choose. Stories of these malevolent beings have been whispered among the Navajo people for centuries, but I never imagined I'd encounter one myself. In the summer of 2023, I decided to spend a few weeks exploring Navajo County in Arizona, hoping to learn more about the local legends and perhaps even catch a glimpse of something extraordinary. Armed with a camera, a notebook, and a sense of adventure, I set off on what I thought would be a thrilling, but ultimately safe, journey. I arrived in Navajo County on a hot, dusty afternoon. The landscape was stark and beautiful, with red rock formations and vast stretches of desert. I checked into a small motel in the town of Holbrook and began asking around about the Skinwalker legend. Most people were reluctant to talk, their faces clouding with fear at the mere mention of the word. It was clear that the legend held a powerful grip on the community. My first real lead came from a local rancher named Ben, who agreed to meet me at a diner on the outskirts of town. Over plates of greasy burgers and fries, Ben told me about the strange occurrences on his property. Livestock disappearing without a trace, eerie howls in the night, and sightings of a large, wolf-like creature that moved with an unnatural speed. Ben's story sent shivers down my spine, but it also intrigued me. He invited me to spend a few nights at his ranch, and I eagerly accepted. That evening, I drove out to Ben's place, a sprawling property nestled at the base of a mesa. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the desert. As I pulled up to the ranch house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Ben greeted me with a firm handshake and a wary smile. He showed me to a small guest room and then took me on a tour of the property. As we walked through the dusty corrals and past the weathered barn, Ben shared more about his encounters with the Skinwalker. He believed it was a witch from a nearby reservation, seeking revenge for some ancient wrong. That night, I sat outside on the porch, scanning the darkness with my camera and listening for any unusual sounds. The air was still and silent, the stars twinkling overhead. I was about to call it a night when I heard a low, guttural growl coming from the direction of the barn. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight and hurried towards the sound. As I approached the barn, I saw a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the corral. It was large and hunched, its eyes glowing a sinister red. I raised my camera, snapping a few photos before the creature let out a blood-curdling scream and disappeared into the night. I stumbled back to the house, my hands trembling and my mind reeling. Ben was waiting for me on the porch, his face pale and drawn. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded, unable to find my voice. Over the next few days, I experienced more strange occurrences. I heard eerie whispers in the wind, saw shadowy figures moving at the edge of my vision, and felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Ben and I set up cameras around the property, hoping to capture more evidence of the Skinwalker's presence. One night, as I was reviewing the footage, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, on the screen, was the Skinwalker, its form shifting and changing. One moment it was a coyote, The next a large, menacing figure that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The sight was both fascinating and horrifying, a glimpse into a world beyond my understanding. Determined to learn more, I reached out to a Navajo elder named Mary, who lived on a nearby reservation. Mary was reluctant to speak about the Skinwalker at first, but after some persuasion, she agreed to meet with me. She welcomed me into her home, a modest dwelling filled with traditional Navajo art and artifacts. Mary shared the history of the Skinwalkers, explaining that they were once powerful medicine men who had turned to dark magic. By performing a ritualistic dance and wearing the skins of animals, they gained the ability to transform into those creatures. Skinwalkers were feared and reviled, known for their malevolent deeds and their ability to curse and kill. Mary also warned me about the dangers of seeking out a Skinwalker. They are not to be trifled with, she said, her voice solemn. They can sense your intentions and will not hesitate to harm those who threaten them. Despite her warnings, I was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. I spent the next few nights on Ben's ranch, staying alert and vigilant. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I heard a series of eerie howls coming from the mesa. I grabbed my camera and flashlight and set off towards the sound, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. As I climbed the rocky slope, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the mesa. It was the Skinwalker, its eyes glowing in the darkness. I raised my camera, but before I could take a photo, the creature let out a deafening roar and lunged at me. I stumbled back, losing my footing and tumbling down the slope. When I regained consciousness, I was lying at the base of the mesa, my body bruised and aching. The Skinwalker was gone, but its presence lingered in the air. I made my way back to the ranch, my mind racing with questions and doubts. The next morning, I reviewed the footage from my camera. Most of it was blurry and indistinct, but there was one frame that captured the Skinwalker in all its terrifying glory. Its form was twisted and grotesque, a blend of human and animal features that defied explanation. The photo was chilling evidence of the creature's existence, but it also raised more questions than answers. My encounter with the Skinwalker left me shaken and humbled. I had sought to uncover the truth, but instead, I found myself drawn into a world of dark magic and ancient curses. The Skinwalker was more than just a legend, it was a living, breathing entity that defied understanding. I left Navajo County with a sense of awe and respect for the mysteries of the world. The Skinwalker remains one of the most terrifying and fascinating creatures I have ever encountered, a reminder that there are forces beyond our comprehension. As I continue my journey into the unknown, I carry with me the lessons I learned in the desert: importance of humility, the power of the unseen, and the enduring allure of the unexplained. My name is Carlos, and I've spent most of my life on a ranch in the small town of Mokele-Mbembe, Texas. The town is quiet, surrounded by vast expanses of farmland and open fields. Growing up, I heard tales of the legendary chupacabra, a creature that supposedly preyed on livestock, leaving behind drained corpses with mysterious puncture wounds. These stories were mostly shared around campfires and during late-night gatherings, but I never gave them much credence. That is, until the summer of 2023. Our family ranch, El Rancho Grande, has been in our family for generations. We raise cattle and goats, and our livelihood depends on the health and safety of our animals. In early June, we started noticing something strange. Several goats were found dead, their bodies completely drained of blood, with peculiar puncture marks on their necks. At first, we suspected wild animals, maybe coyotes or bobcats, but the wounds were unlike anything we had ever seen. My father, a pragmatic man, dismissed the idea of the chupacabra as mere superstition. However, as more animals turned up dead, even he began to question what could be causing these attacks. Determined to protect our livestock and uncover the truth, I decided to investigate the matter myself. One evening, I set up a series of trail cameras around the ranch, focusing on the areas where the attacks had occurred. I also made sure to keep a close watch on the animals, staying up late into the night to see if I could catch a glimpse of the predator. The nights were long and eerie, the silence occasionally broken by the distant howls of coyotes and the rustle of leaves in the wind. After a week of sleepless nights and uneventful footage, I was starting to lose hope. Then, one night, as I was patrolling the far side of the ranch, I heard a series of low growls coming from the goat pen. My heart raced as I crept closer, a flashlight cutting through the darkness. As I approached, I saw a shadowy figure hunched over one of the goats. It was unlike any animal I had ever seen. The creature was about the size of a large dog, with spiky, reptilian scales covering its body. Its eyes glowed a fierce red in the beam of my flashlight, and it had long, sharp fangs that gleamed in the darkness. I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. The chupacabra was real, and it was standing right in front of me. The creature let out a guttural snarl, and I stumbled backward, dropping my flashlight. In the chaos, the chupacabra darted into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. I scrambled to pick up my flashlight and hurried back to the house, my mind racing with fear and excitement. The next morning, I reviewed the footage from the trail cameras. To my astonishment, one of the cameras had captured a clear image of the chupacabra. The creature was just as I had seen, it reptilian, with sharp fangs and glowing red eyes. I showed the footage to my father and the rest of the family, and for the first time, we all believed in the legend of the chupacabra. News of our discovery spread quickly, and soon our ranch was swarming with journalists, researchers, and curious onlookers. Some were skeptical, while others were convinced that we had found definitive proof of the chupacabra's existence. Among the visitors was Dr. Elena Ramirez, a cryptozoologist who had spent years studying reports of the chupacabra across Latin America. Dr. Ramirez was fascinated by our footage and eager to conduct a thorough investigation. She set up a base of operations at the ranch, bringing with her an array of scientific equipment and a team of researchers. Together, we worked to uncover more evidence and understand the behavior of the chupacabra. As we delved deeper into the mystery, we discovered that the chupacabra was more than just a bloodthirsty predator. It seemed to exhibit a cunning intelligence, avoiding our traps and evading capture at every turn. We also learned that the creature's attacks followed a pattern, occurring in cycles that coincided with certain lunar phases. One night, while reviewing the latest footage, we noticed something unusual. The chupacabra seemed to be targeting specific animals, leaving others untouched. Dr. Ramirez hypothesized that the creature might be selecting its prey based on certain criteria, perhaps related to the animal's health or behavior. This theory added a new layer of complexity to our investigation. Determined to gather more data, we set up a series of infrared cameras and motion sensors around the ranch. We also implemented tighter security measures to protect the livestock, including reinforced enclosures and regular patrols. Despite our efforts, the chupacabra continued to elude us, striking with terrifying precision and then vanishing into the night. As the weeks went by, the atmosphere at the ranch grew tense. The constant threat of attack weighed heavily on us, and we were no closer to capturing the creature. Then, one night, everything changed. It was a clear, moonlit evening, and I was patrolling the perimeter of the ranch with Dr. Ramirez. We were discussing the latest developments when we heard a series of frantic bleats coming from the goat pen. We rushed over, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. There, in the middle of the pen, stood the chupacabra. It was crouched over one of the goats, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. This time, however, it didn't flee. Instead, it turned to face us, baring its fangs in a menacing snarl. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I raised my flashlight, trying to get a better look at the creature. Dr. Ramirez began to take photos, her camera clicking rapidly. The chupacabra let out a blood-curdling scream and lunged at us. But before it could reach us, it was stopped by an invisible barrier, the reinforced enclosure we had built around the pen. The creature clawed at the barrier, its eyes filled with rage. For a moment, I thought it might break through, but then it seemed to realize that it was trapped. With a final, furious snarl, it turned and leapt over the fence, disappearing into the night. The encounter left us shaken but determined. We had come closer than ever to capturing the chupacabra, and we were not about to give up. Over the next few days, we reviewed the footage and analyzed the photos, piecing together a clearer picture of the creature's behavior and capabilities. Dr. Ramirez published a detailed report on our findings, which garnered significant attention from the scientific community. While some remained skeptical, others saw our evidence as a breakthrough in the study of cryptozoology. The chupacabra, once a creature of legend, was now a subject of serious scientific inquiry. Our ranch, however, was still under siege. The chupacabra continued to attack, its cunning and ferocity undiminished. We knew that capturing or neutralizing the creature was our only option. With the help of Dr. Ramirez and her team, we devised a plan to trap the chupacabra and put an end to its reign of terror. Using a combination of high-tech traps and traditional methods, we set up a series of baited enclosures around the ranch. We also enlisted the help of local hunters and trackers, hoping their expertise would give us an edge. It was a risky plan, but we were determined to see it through. One fateful night, as the full moon rose over the ranch, we prepared for the final showdown. I joined the patrols, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. As the hours passed, the tension grew unbearable. Then, just before dawn, we heard the unmistakable growl of the chupacabra. The creature had taken the bait, entering one of the reinforced enclosures. We watched in tense silence as it struggled against the trap, its eyes glowing with fury. With a final, desperate lunge, the chupacabra triggered the mechanism, and the enclosure snapped shut, trapping it inside. We approached cautiously, our flashlights illuminating the creature's menacing form. The chupacabra thrashed and snarled, but it was securely contained. For the first time, we had captured the legendary beast. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Scientists and researchers flocked to the ranch, eager to study the chupacabra up close. The creature was examined, photographed, and documented in meticulous detail. It was a landmark moment in the field of cryptozoology, and our ranch became the center of a media frenzy. Despite the excitement, there was also a sense of unease. The chupacabra was a living testament to the mysteries of the natural world. A reminder that there are still creatures out there that defy explanation. As we watched the scientists work, I couldn't help but feel a deep respect for the creature that had eluded us for so long. In the end, the chupacabra was transferred to a secure research facility, where it would be studied further. Our ranch slowly returned to normal. The threat of attack finally lifted. But the legend of the chupacabra lived on, a story of fear, fascination, and the enduring mystery of the unknown. As for me, the experience left a lasting impression. I had come face to face with the creature of legend, a beast that defied understanding and challenged everything I thought I knew about the world. The chupacabra was more than just a monster, it was a symbol of the wild, untamed forces that still lurk in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. My name is Emma, and I grew up in the quiet town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Nestled in Walworth County, our town is known for its serene landscapes, friendly community, and, as I would come to learn, the terrifying legend of the Beast of Bray Road. As a child, I heard whispered tales of this creature, a werewolf-like beast that prowled the rural roads and farmlands. I dismissed these stories as mere folklore, never imagining that I would one day encounter the beast myself. In the summer of 2023, I returned to Elkhorn after completing my journalism degree. Eager to start my career, I took a job at the local newspaper, the Elkhorn Observer. My editor, Mr. Thompson, was a grizzled veteran of the news business who had covered everything from local politics to strange occurrences. When he assigned me to investigate the recent sightings of the Beast of Bray Road, I was both excited and skeptical. People have been seeing something out there, mister, Thompson said, handing me a folder of reports. Could be a bear, could be a prank. But if there's a story, I want you to find it. I began my investigation by talking to locals who claimed to have seen the beast. Their accounts were eerily similar descriptions of a large wolf-like creature that walked on two legs, with glowing eyes and a menacing presence. Some witnesses were too frightened to speak on record, while others eagerly shared their experiences, hoping to warn the community about the creature that stalked Bray Road. One of the most compelling accounts came from a farmer named Joe, whose property bordered Bray Road. Joe was a no-nonsense man, not given to flights of fancy. When I visited his farm, he showed me the spot where he had encountered the beast. It was late at night, Joe said, his voice trembling slightly. I was out checking on the cattle when I saw it. Big, like a man, but covered in fur. Its eyes, they glowed red in the flashlight beam. It stared at me for what felt like an eternity before it turned and disappeared into the woods. Joe's description sent chills down my spine. Determined to gather more evidence, I decided to stake out Bray Road. Armed with a camera, a flashlight, and a notebook, I spent several nights parked on the side of the road, watching and waiting. The nights were long and eerie, with the rustle of leaves and the distant howls of coyotes keeping me on edge. On the fourth night, as I was about to call it quits, I saw something moving in the distance. My heart raced as I grabbed my camera and focused the lens. There, at the edge of the woods, was a shadowy figure. It was tall, with broad shoulders and a hunched posture. The creature stepped into the moonlight, and I could see its fur glistening in the pale glow. I snapped a few photos, my hands shaking with fear and excitement. The beast turned its head, and for a brief moment, our eyes locked. Its gaze was intense, almost intelligent, and I felt a primal fear wash over me. Then, with a powerful leap, it vanished into the darkness. I sat in my car, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The beast of Bray Road was real, and I had the photos to prove it. The next day, I showed the photos to Mr. Thompson. He was impressed but cautious. "This is big, Emma," he said. "But we need more. Keep digging, and see if you can find any other evidence." Encouraged by his words, I continued my investigation. I reached out to cryptozoologists, local historians, and anyone who might have insight into the creature. One name kept coming. Upter. Linda Godfrey, an author and researcher who had written extensively about the beast of Bray Road. I contacted Dr. Godfrey and arranged to meet her at a local cafe. She was a petite woman, with a warm smile and an air of quiet authority. Over coffee, she shared her extensive knowledge of the beast. "The sightings date back to the 1930s, Dr. Godfrey explained. People have described a large, bipedal creature, often resembling a werewolf. It's been seen in various locations around Bray Road and beyond. Some believe it might be a misidentified animal, while others think it's something more supernatural." Dr. Godfrey showed me sketches and old newspaper clippings, painting a vivid picture of the creature's history. She also mentioned a series of unusual animal mutilations that had occurred in the area, which some believed were connected to the beast. Intrigued by this new lead, I visited the local animal control office to see if there were any recent reports of mutilations or attacks. The officer on duty, a gruff man named Tom, was initially dismissive, but softened when he saw my determination. "Yeah, we've had some strange cases," Tom admitted. "Cattle, deer, even a few pets. Always the same deep gashes, broken bones, and the bodies left in unnatural positions. It's not something a normal predator would do." Tom showed me the reports, and the details were chilling. The injuries were consistent with something powerful and violent. Yet there were no signs of typical predatory behavior, like feeding on the carcasses. It was as if the attacks were meant to terrorize rather than sustain. Armed with this information, I decided to return to Bray Road, this time with the team. I enlisted the help of my friend Mark, a wildlife photographer, and his sister Lisa, an amateur cryptozoologist. Together, we set up a series of motion-activated cameras and infrared sensors along the road and the surrounding woods. For several nights, we camped out, taking turns monitoring the equipment. The atmosphere was tense, and every rustle of leaves or distant animal call set us on edge. On the third night, our patience paid off. The motion sensors detected movement, and the cameras captured a series of images. In the photos, we saw the beast of Bray Road, moving stealthily through the trees. Its fur was matted and dark, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The creature's posture was both animalistic and eerily human, a disturbing blend of predator and man. We also noticed something else: scratch marks on the trees, as if the beast was marking its territory. Excited by our findings, we presented the evidence to Mr. Thompson. He was stunned by the clarity of the photos and the depth of our investigation. "This is incredible, Emma," he said. "We'll run the story, but we need to be careful. This could cause a lot of panic." The article was published, and the reaction was immediate. The town was abuzz with talk of the beast of Bray Road, and our newspaper received a flood of calls and emails from people claiming to have seen the creature. Some were supportive, while others accused us of fabricating the story. Despite the mixed reactions, we continued our investigation. Dr. Godfrey joined us in the field, bringing her expertise and insight. We expanded our search area, following reports of sightings and strange occurrences. Each night, we uncovered more evidence: tracks, fur samples, and even recordings of the beast's haunting growls. One night, as we were setting up our equipment, we heard a series of low, guttural sounds coming from the woods. We grabbed our cameras and flashlights, moving cautiously towards the noise. As we approached, we saw the creature, standing at the edge of a clearing. The beast of Bray Road was even more terrifying up close. Its fur was thick and dark, its muscles rippling beneath its skin. The creature's eyes glowed with an unsettling intelligence, and its teeth were long and sharp. It stared at us for a moment, then let out a deafening roar that echoed through the trees. We stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Then, the beast turned and disappeared into the darkness. We followed cautiously, our flashlights flickering in the night. As we moved deeper into the woods, we found a series of large, clawed footprints, leading to a hidden cave. Inside the cave, we discovered a collection of bones and animal carcasses, evidence of the beast's predatory nature. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls were marked with deep scratches. It was clear that we had found the lair of the beast of Bray Road. We documented everything, taking photos and samples. As we left the cave, we felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. We had uncovered the truth behind the legend, but we also knew that the beast was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Our findings were published in a series of articles, attracting national attention. The story of the beast of Bray Road became a sensation, drawing researchers, thrill-seekers, and skeptics to our small town. The local authorities increased patrols and issued warnings, urging residents to stay indoors after dark. Despite the heightened awareness, sightings of the beast continued. Each encounter was a reminder of the creature's elusive and dangerous nature. For me, the experience was both terrifying and enlightening. I had come face to face with a legend and lived to tell the tale. The beast of Bray Road remains one of the most enigmatic and feared creatures in cryptozoology. Its existence challenges our understanding of the natural world and reminds us that there are still mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As I continue my career in journalism, I carry with me the lessons I learned from my encounter with the beast: courage, curiosity, and a respect for the unknown. My name is Dr. Laura Harris, and I am an archaeologist specializing in ancient civilizations of Central Asia. For the past decade, I have dedicated my life to uncovering the mysteries buried beneath the vast expanses of the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. The desert is a harsh and unforgiving place, where temperatures can soar during the day. and plummet at night, and where sandstorms can rise without warning. It is also the home of many legends and myths, the most terrifying of which is the tale of the Mongolian deathworm. The Mongolian deathworm, known locally as Olgoy-Korkoy, is said to be a creature of nightmares. Descriptions vary, but most agree that it is a large, red worm, about 2 to 5 feet long, capable of spitting venom and discharging electric shocks. The very mention of the deathworm can strike fear into the hearts of the locals, who believe it to be a harbinger of death and misfortune. I first heard about the Mongolian deathworm from my colleague, Dr. Tuman, a native Mongolian and fellow archaeologist. He recounted stories from his childhood, of shepherds and travelers who had disappeared without a trace, and of animals found dead with no apparent cause. Despite the fearsome reputation of the deathworm, I was skeptical. I considered it to be another desert legend, a tale to keep children close to home, and to explain the inexplicable. In the summer of 2023, I led an expedition into the heart of the Gobi Desert, accompanied by a team of international researchers and local guides. Our mission was to excavate a recently discovered site believed to be the remnants of an ancient nomadic settlement. We hoped to uncover artifacts that would shed light on the history and culture of the people who once thrived in this inhospitable landscape. The first few weeks of the expedition were uneventful. We set up camp near the site and began our excavation, carefully sifting through the sand and debris. The work was slow and meticulous, but we were rewarded with fragments of pottery, tools, and even a few skeletal remains. The excitement of discovery fueled our efforts, and we pushed deeper into the desert, determined to uncover more. One evening, as we gathered around the campfire, our lead guide, Batu, began to speak of the Mongolian deathworm. His voice was low and serious, and the other guides listened with rapt attention. He told us of a recent sighting, just a few miles from our camp, where a shepherd had found several of his goats dead, their bodies bloated and discolored. "The deathworm is real," Batu said, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "It moves through the sand like a fish through water. It can kill with a touch, and its venom can paralyze a man in seconds. We must be careful." The other members of the expedition exchanged uneasy glances, but I remained skeptical. "There must be a rational explanation," I said. "Perhaps the goats were bitten by a snake or died of disease." Batu shook his head. "I have seen the marks left by the deathworm. They are unlike any snake bite or disease. If you wish to stay safe, you must respect the desert and its creatures." Despite Batu's warning, we continued our work undeterred. However, as the days passed, strange occurrences began to unsettle the team. We heard unexplained noises at night, like the slithering of something large moving through the sand. Some of our equipment malfunctioned without reason, and a few team members fell ill with symptoms that defy diagnosis. One morning, we awoke to find a deep trench in the sand, as if something large had burrowed through during the night. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine. Could the legends be true? Could there really be a creature lurking beneath the sands, watching and waiting? Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to set up a series of motion-activated cameras around the camp. If there was something out there, I wanted to capture it on film. The team was on edge, but we continued our excavation, hoping to distract ourselves from the growing sense of unease. On the fourth night, as I reviewed the footage from the cameras, my heart nearly stopped. One of the cameras had captured Mokele-Mbembe's shadowy figure slithering through the sand, its form indistinct but unmistakably worm-like. I called the team together and showed them the footage. The fear in their eyes mirrored my own. We debated what to do. Some wanted to abandon the expedition and return to safety, while others, like myself, were driven by a desire to understand the creature. We decided to stay, but with increased vigilance. We set up more cameras and sensors, hoping to gather more evidence. The following night, we were awakened by a blood-curdling scream. Rushing out of our tents, we found one of our researchers, Tom, convulsing on the ground. His skin was mottled and discolored, and his eyes were wide with terror. but two knelt beside him, muttering prayers under his breath. Despite our efforts to save him, Tom died within minutes. The loss of our colleague was devastating, and the fear among the team was palpable. But two insisted that the death worm had struck, and his conviction was unwavering. We were dealing with a creature that defied our understanding, a beast from legend that had become all too real. In the days that followed, we fortified our camp, and took every precaution. We wore protective clothing, kept our distance from the sand, and doubled our watch. Despite our efforts, the sense of dread continued to grow. The death worm was out there, and it was watching us. One evening, as the sun set over the dunes, I decided to take a walk around the perimeter of the camp. The desert was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft crunch of sand underfoot. I was lost in thought when I heard a faint hissing noise behind me. I turned, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. There, emerging from the sand, was the Mongolian death worm. It was larger than I had imagined, its body a deep, blood-red color, and its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The creature reared up, its mouth opening to reveal rows of sharp, needle-like teeth. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. The death worm lunged at me, and I stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding its venomous bite. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to the camp, shouting for help. The team emerged, armed with whatever tools and weapons we could find. We stood together, facing the creature that had haunted our nights. In the flickering light of our flashlights, the death worm seemed to hesitate. It hissed and thrashed, but it did not advance. But two stepped forward, holding a large metal rod. He struck the ground with it, creating a loud, resonating sound. The death worm recoiled, then retreated into the sand, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. We stood in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. But two explained that the vibrations from the rod had likely driven the creature away. It was a temporary solution, but it bought us some time. We needed to leave the desert, and quickly. The next morning, we packed up our camp, and began the journey back to civilization. The trip was tense, with everyone on high alert, but we encountered no further sign of the death worm. By the time we reached the safety of the nearest town, we were exhausted and shaken, but relieved to be alive. The encounter with the Mongolian death worm changed everything. It challenged my skepticism and forced me to confront the reality of the unknown. The footage and evidence we gathered were shared with the scientific community, sparking debates and further investigations. Despite the danger, the experience deepened my respect for the legends and the people who live in the shadow of the Gobi Desert. The Mongolian death worm remains a mystery, a creature that straddles the line between myth and reality. And as an archaeologist, I am reminded that the world is full of wonders and terrors, waiting to be discovered. My name is Javier Garcia, and I grew up in a small village in Puerto Rico. As a child, I often heard stories of a creature known as the chupacabra beast said to prey on livestock, draining their blood and leaving behind lifeless bodies. The tales were frightening, but like most children, I dismissed them as mere folklore. Little did I know that one day, I would come face to face with this terrifying creature. In the summer of 2023, I returned to my village after years of living in the United States. I had built a life for myself as a veterinarian, but I felt a longing to reconnect with my roots. My family owned a small farm, and I decided to spend some time helping out and enjoying the tranquility of rural life. The first few weeks were peaceful. I tended to the animals, helped with the crops, and reconnected with old friends. However, things took a dark turn one night when I was awakened by the sound of distressed animals. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside, my heart pounding with fear. What I saw chilled me to the bone. Several of our goats lay dead, their bodies strangely unmarked, except for two small puncture wounds on their necks. It was as if something had drained them of their blood. The sight was eerily reminiscent of the chupacabra stories I had heard as a child. The next morning, I held a meeting with my family and our neighbors. We gathered in the village square, where the elders recounted their own encounters with the chupacabra. Some spoke of livestock lost, others of eerie sightings at night. The fear in their voices was palpable. One of the villagers, Maria, claimed to have seen the creature. "It was late at night," she said, her voice trembling. "I heard something outside and looked out the window. There it was, a dark figure, hunched over one of my chickens. It had glowing red eyes and spines down its back. I was too scared to move." Her description matched the traditional accounts of the chupacabra, an eerie, reptilian creature with spines along its back and glowing red eyes. Despite my scientific training, I didn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. There was something out there, something that defied explanation. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to investigate further. I set up motion-activated cameras around the farm and began staying up late, watching for any signs of the creature. The nights were long and tense, with every rustle of leaves and distant howl setting my nerves on edge. On the fourth night, my patience paid off. I was reviewing the footage from one of the cameras when I saw a shadowy figure moving through the trees. It was hunched and moved with an unnatural gait. As it approached the goat pen, I could see its glowing red eyes and the spines along its back. I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew I needed more evidence. I called my friend Carlos, a wildlife biologist, and asked for his help. Carlos was skeptical, but agreed to join me in the investigation. Together, we set up additional cameras and motion sensors around the farm. The following night, we stayed up late, watching the live feed from the cameras. Around midnight, we saw the creature again. It moved silently through the shadows, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. As it approached the goats, Carlos and I rushed outside, hoping to catch it in the act. We were too late. By the time we reached the pen, the creature had disappeared, leaving behind another dead goat with the same puncture wounds. Carlos examined the body, his face grim. "Whatever this thing is, it's not natural," he said. "We need to be careful." The next day, we reviewed the footage and showed it to the villagers. The sight of the chupacabra on camera sent waves of fear through the community. People began to fortify their homes and keep their livestock close. Despite the heightened precautions, the attacks continued, each one more brazen than the last. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Dr. Elena Morales, a cryptozoologist who had studied the chupacabra extensively. Dr. Morales agreed to come to the village and help us with our investigation. She arrived a few days later, bringing with her a wealth of knowledge and specialized equipment. Dr. Morales set up a series of traps and sensors around the farm, hoping to capture the creature. We worked tirelessly, analyzing the evidence and trying to predict the chupacabra's next move. As the days passed, the tension in the village grew. People were afraid to go out at night, and the sense of dread was palpable. One night, as we were monitoring the traps, we heard a series of loud noises coming from the barn. We grabbed our flashlights and rushed over, our hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. As we approached, we saw the chupacabra trapped inside one of the cages. The creature was even more terrifying up close. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its spines bristled as it snarled and thrashed against the cage. Despite its fearsome appearance, I felt a pang of sympathy for the beast. It was a creature of the wild, driven by instinct and hunger. Dr. Morales carefully tranquilized the chupacabra, and we transported it to a secure location for further study. Over the next few days, we conducted a series of tests and examinations. The creature's biology was unlike anything we had ever seen, a bizarre mix of reptilian and mammalian traits. As we studied the chupacabra, we began to piece together its behavior and habits. It was a solitary predator, highly adaptable and intelligent. Its ability to drain blood suggested a specialized feeding mechanism, possibly related to parasitic insects. Despite our findings, many questions remained unanswered. The capture of the chupacabra brought a sense of relief to the village, but the fear and tension lingered. People were wary, unsure if there were more creatures out there. The experience had shaken their sense of security and reminded them of the mysteries and dangers that still lurk in the world. For me, the encounter with the chupacabra was both terrifying and enlightening. It challenged my scientific understanding and forced me to confront the unknown. As a veterinarian and researcher, I'm committed to continuing my study of the creature, hoping to unlock its secrets and learn more about its place in the natural world. The chupacabra remains a symbol of the unexplained, a reminder that there are still many mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As I continue my work, I carry with me the lessons of that summer: courage, curiosity, and a deep respect for the unknown. My name is Kevin Mitchell, and I've always been a skeptic. As a journalist for a major magazine, my job is to separate fact from fiction, to uncover the truth behind the stories that captivate the public's imagination. When I first heard about the Jersey Devil, I dismissed it as just another piece of American folklore tale spun to scare children and entertain adults. But a recent series of strange events in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey made me question everything I thought I knew. It all started with a phone call from an old friend, Sarah. We had grown up together in the small town of Hamilton, on the edge of the Pine Barrens, but had lost touch over the years. Sarah now worked as a park ranger, and her voice on the other end of the line was filled with fear. "Kevin, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "There's something out here in the woods. People are disappearing, and I think it might be the Jersey Devil." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Sarah, you know I don't believe in that stuff. It's just a legend." I know, she replied. "But I can't explain what's happening. You need to see it for yourself." Despite my skepticism, I decided to take a leave of absence and head back to Hamilton. If nothing else, it would make for an interesting story. I packed my bags, grabbed my camera and recorder, and made the drive to New Jersey. When I arrived, Sarah was waiting for me at the ranger station. She looked tired and worried, a stark contrast to the confident and adventurous girl I remembered. She took me to a small cabin in the woods where I would be staying during my investigation. "Be careful, Kevin," she warned, as she handed me a map of the area. "There have been strange sightings and unexplained noises at night. And whatever you do, don't wander too far from the cabin after dark." I nodded, though I still wasn't convinced. I spent the first day exploring the Pine Barrens, interviewing locals and gathering stories. The tales were all eerily similar: strange screeches in the night, shadowy figures lurking in the trees, and livestock found dead with no apparent cause. That evening, I sat on the porch of the cabin, reviewing my notes and enjoying the cool breeze. As the sun set, the forest around me grew dark and silent. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and a sense of unease settled over me. Suddenly, a piercing screech echoed through the trees. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard, a mix of a woman's scream and an animal's howl. I grabbed my flashlight and camera and cautiously made my way into the woods, following the sound. As I moved deeper into the forest, the trees closed in around me, their twisted branches casting eerie shadows in the dim light. I heard rustling in the underbrush and the faint sound of footsteps. My flashlight flickered, and I cursed under my breath. Then I saw a dark figure darting between the trees. It was fast, almost too fast to be human. I raised my camera and snapped a few photos, hoping to capture whatever it was. The figure stopped and turned to face me, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was looking at the Jersey Devil. The creature was grotesque, with leathery wings, a horse-like head, and clawed hands. It let out another screech and took a step toward me. I stumbled backward, my flashlight slipping from my grasp. In the dim light, I could see its sharp teeth and the malevolent glint in its eyes. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees and underbrush creating an impenetrable maze. I could hear the creature behind me, its footsteps growing closer. Desperation fueled my legs as I sprinted toward the cabin, the screeches of the Jersey Devil echoing in the night. I burst through the door and slammed it shut, my chest heaving with exertion. I fumbled for the lock, my hands shaking. The creature's screeches grew louder, and I could hear it scratching at the door. I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle, hoping it would hold. The noise outside subsided, and an eerie silence fell over the cabin. I sank to the floor, my mind racing. I had come face to face with the Jersey Devil, and it had nearly killed me. The stories were true, and I had the photos to prove it. The next morning, I showed Sarah the photos and recounted my encounter. Her face went pale as she listened, and she nodded grimly. "We need to warn the others," she said. "If the Jersey Devil is real, then everyone in the Pine Barrens is in danger." We spent the next few days organizing a search party, enlisting the help of local authorities and volunteers. We set up cameras and traps throughout the forest, hoping to capture more evidence and find a way to protect the community. One night, as we were reviewing the footage, we saw the Jersey Devil again. It moved through the trees with an otherworldly grace, its wings casting dark shadows. It seemed to be searching for something, and we realized that it was hunting. The search party intensified their efforts, patrolling the woods and keeping a close watch on the livestock. Despite our precautions, more animals were found dead, their bodies mutilated and drained of blood. The fear in the community grew, and people began to avoid the forest altogether. One evening, as we were setting up another round of traps, we heard a scream. We rushed toward the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. We found one of the volunteers, a young man named Mark, lying on the ground, his leg bleeding profusely. He was pale and trembling, and he whispered, "It got me. The devil got me." We carried Mark back to the cabin and tended to his wounds. He had deep gashes on his leg, and he was in shock. As we bandaged him up, he recounted his encounter with the creature. "It came out of nowhere," he said, his voice weak. "I tried to run, but it was too fast. It slashed at me with its claws and disappeared into the trees." The attack on Mark was a turning point. We realized that the Jersey Devil was not just a threat to livestock, but to people as well. We needed to find a way to stop it before more lives were put in danger. We decided to confront the creature head-on. Armed with tranquilizer guns and protective gear, we ventured into the heart of the Pine Barrens, following the trails and signs left by the Jersey Devil. The forest was eerily silent, and every rustle of leaves sent a chill down my spine. As we moved deeper into the woods, we found an old, abandoned cabin. It was overgrown with vines and covered in moss, but it looked like it had been recently disturbed. We approached cautiously, our weapons at the ready. Inside the cabin, we found a makeshift nest. The walls were lined with bones and feathers, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. In the center of the room, lying on a bed of leaves, was the Jersey Devil. It was sleeping, its chest rising and falling with each breath. We aimed our tranquilizer guns and fired. The creature let out a screech and thrashed wildly, but the tranquilizers took effect, and it soon fell into a deep sleep. We carefully secured it and transported it back to the ranger station. The capture of the Jersey Devil was a moment of triumph, but it also raised many questions. What was this creature? Where did it come from? And how had it survived for so long undetected? Over the next few weeks, we conducted a series of tests and examinations. The Jersey Devil's biology was unlike anything we had ever seen, a bizarre mix of mammalian and reptilian traits. It had an unusually high level of intelligence and a complex social structure. As we studied the creature, we began to piece together its history. The Jersey Devil was not just a legend, but a real, living entity that had adapted to its environment over centuries. Its attacks on livestock and people were driven by a need for survival, a predator trying to protect its territory. The discovery of the Jersey Devil sent shockwaves through the scientific community and the public. It challenged our understanding of the natural world and forced us to confront the mysteries that still exist in the shadows. For me, the encounter was a humbling reminder of the unknown and the importance of keeping an open mind. As I returned to my life as a journalist, I carried with me the lessons of that summer. The Jersey Devil was no longer just a story, but a symbol of the unexplained. A reminder that there are still many wonders and terrors waiting to be discovered. My name is Eileen MacLeod, and I grew up in the quaint village of Drumnadrochit, on the shores of Loch Ness, Scotland. The legend of the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, as we affectionately call her, has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. My parents owned a small bed and breakfast, and our guests were often tourists hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive creature. As a child, I would sit by the loch, staring out over the water, imagining what secrets lay beneath its dark surface. I moved to Edinburgh for university and eventually became a marine biologist. My work took me to exotic locations around the world, but my heart always longed for the misty hills and deep waters of Loch Ness. In the summer of 2022, I decided to take a sabbatical and return to my roots. Hoping to combine my scientific knowledge with my childhood curiosity to investigate the mystery of Nessie. Upon arriving in Drumnadrochit, I was greeted by familiar faces and nostalgic sights. The village hadn't changed much, and the loch was as beautiful and enigmatic as ever. I set up my base of operations at my parents' bed and breakfast, and began to plan my research. I reached out to old friends and local experts, gathering stories and data about Nessie sightings. One evening, while having dinner at the local pub, I struck up a conversation with an old fisherman named Angus. He was a weathered man, with deep-set eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of secrets. When I mentioned my interest in the Loch Ness Monster, he leaned in and whispered, "If you want to find Nessie, you'll need to go deeper than anyone has ever gone before." Intrigued, I pressed him for more information. Angus told me about a series of underwater caves he had discovered years ago while fishing. "The caves are dangerous," he warned. "But if Nessie is real, that's where you'll find her." With Angus' guidance, I rented a small boat and gathered my diving equipment. I enlisted the help of my old friend, Ewan, who was an experienced diver. Together, we planned our expedition to explore the depths of Loch Ness and the hidden caves beneath its surface. The first few days of diving were uneventful. We mapped the underwater terrain and collected samples, but there was no sign of Nessie. On the fourth day, as we descended into a particularly deep part of the loch, we stumbled upon an entrance to one of the caves Angus had described. The opening was narrow and dark, and I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as we prepared to enter. The cave was unlike anything I had ever seen. The walls were covered in strange, bioluminescent algae that cast an eerie glow, illuminating our path. As we ventured deeper, the cave widened into a large, subterranean chamber. The water was surprisingly clear, and I could see ancient rock formations and peculiar marine life. Suddenly, Ewan tapped my shoulder and pointed ahead. My heart skipped a beat as I saw a large, shadowy figure moving gracefully through the water. It was unlike any creature I had ever encountered, with a long neck, a serpentine body, and flippers that propelled it effortlessly through the cave. Nessie! I quickly turned on my underwater camera and began filming, capturing the creature's movements. Nessie seemed to be curious about us, approaching slowly, and then retreating. She was majestic and serene, a living relic from a time long past. I felt a profound sense of awe and wonder as I watched her glide through the water. After what felt like an eternity, Nessie disappeared into the depths of the cave. Ewan and I surfaced, our minds reeling with what we had just witnessed. We returned to the boat and reviewed the footage, our excitement growing with each passing moment. We had captured undeniable proof of the Loch Ness Monster. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. We shared our findings with the local community and the scientific world, sparking a media frenzy. Experts from around the globe descended upon Loch Ness, eager to study the creature and the unique ecosystem of the underwater caves. As the days turned into weeks, we learned more about Nessie and her habitat. The caves provided a safe haven, with a stable food supply and protection from the outside world. Nessie was not alone. We discovered a small population of similar creatures, suggesting a breeding colony that had managed to survive undetected for centuries. The discovery of Nessie and the underwater caves had a profound impact on our understanding of marine biology and evolutionary history. It challenged our perceptions of what was possible and opened up new avenues of research. For the village of Drumnadrakit, it brought a sense of pride and wonder, reaffirming the magic and mystery of Loch Ness. For me, the experience was transformative. I had come full circle, returning to the place where my fascination with the natural world had begun. The journey had reignited my passion for exploration and discovery, and I felt a deep connection to my heritage and the landscape that had shaped my life. As I stood on the shores of Loch Ness, looking out over the water, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Nessie was real, and the loch still held many secrets waiting to be uncovered. I knew that my work was far from over, and I was eager to continue exploring the mysteries of the deep. The legend of the Loch Ness monster had become a reality, and the world would never be the same. But for the people of Drumnadrakit, Nessie was more than just a creature. She was a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that there are still wonders to be discovered and mysteries to be solved. As I prepared to leave the village and return to my life as a marine biologist, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The story of Nessie was far from over, and I was determined to continue uncovering the secrets of the natural world, one discovery at a time. My name is Elijah Blackwood, and I'm a historian with a focus on Native American folklore. My fascination with these ancient tales began in childhood when my grandfather, a member of the Ojibwe tribe, would tell me stories passed down through generations. Among these stories, the legend of the Wendigo stood out the most, a monstrous spirit born from human greed and the hunger for flesh. Little did I know, this legend would become a terrifying reality for me. In the fall of 2022, I received a grant to conduct field research in the remote forests of northern Minnesota. My goal was to document and understand the cultural significance of the Wendigo myth among the Ojibwe and neighboring tribes. I set up my base in a small cabin near the edge of the forest, far from the nearest town. The isolation was perfect for my research, but it also carried an unsettling quiet that gnawed at my nerves. The first few weeks were productive. I interviewed local tribal elders, who shared their knowledge and personal encounters with the Wendigo. According to the legend, the Wendigo was once a human who had committed the ultimate taboo of cannibalism, transforming into a gaunt, skeletal creature, driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Its presence was heralded by the stench of decay and an eerie, bone-chilling cold. One elder, Martha Whitefeather, was particularly insightful. She spoke of a series of disappearances in the area during her youth, which many attributed to the Wendigo. "It feeds on fear and desperation," she said, her voice trembling. "And when the cold winds blow, it awakens." As winter approached, the temperature dropped significantly, and a sense of foreboding settled over the forest. The nights were long and filled with the howling of the wind, which seemed to carry whispers of something sinister. My nights were restless, plagued by vivid nightmares of being hunted by a shadowy figure. One evening, as I was reviewing my notes by the fireplace, I heard a strange noise outside the cabin. It was a low, guttural growl, unlike any animal I had ever encountered. I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously stepped outside, scanning the dark forest. The beam of light caught a pair of glowing eyes in the distance, and my heart skipped a beat. The eyes disappeared, and I heard the sound of something large moving through the trees. I retreated to the safety of the cabin, bolting the door behind me. My mind raced with the possibility that the Wendigo was not just a myth, but a real and terrifying presence in the forest. The next day, I decided to explore the area where I had seen the eyes. I found large, claw-like footprints in the snow, leading deeper into the forest. As I followed the trail, the air grew colder, and an unnatural stillness enveloped the woods. The silence was broken only by the crunch of my footsteps and the distant cawing of crows. I came across a clearing where the trees were twisted and blackened as if scorched by fire. The ground was littered with bones, both animal and human, picked clean and gnawed to the marrow. My stomach churned at the sight, and I felt a primal fear take hold of me. Suddenly, a gust of icy wind swept through the clearing, and I heard a whispering voice calling my name. I turned around, and there it was, Wendigo. Its gaunt, skeletal frame towered over me, its eyes burning with a malevolent hunger. The creature's breath was visible in the frigid air, and its foul stench filled my nostrils. I froze in terror, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. The Wendigo let out a blood-curdling scream and lunged at me. I stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding its grasp, and ran for my life. The forest seemed to close in around me, the twisted trees forming a labyrinth of shadows. I reached the cabin and slammed the door shut, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I couldn't stay here. The Wendigo would find a way in eventually. I gathered my essentials and prepared to leave, but the sound of scratching at the door filled me with dread. The creature was relentless, and I could hear its growls growing louder. Desperate, I remembered a story Martha had told me about the only way to repel a Wendigo. According to legend, the creature feared fire and could be driven away by its light. I grabbed a can of gasoline from the storage shed and doused the perimeter of the cabin, setting it ablaze. The flames roared to life, casting eerie shadows on the trees. The Wendigo let out a furious howl and retreated into the darkness. I watched as the fire consumed the cabin, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. My research was gone, but my life was spared. I made my way back to the nearest town, my mind reeling from the encounter. The legend of the Wendigo was no longer just a story, but a horrifying reality. I shared my experience with the tribal elders, who confirmed that I had encountered the true essence of the Wendigo. The experience changed me. I realized that some legends are grounded in truths we cannot fully comprehend. The Wendigo was a manifestation of human darkness, a reminder of the consequences of our actions and the depths of our primal fears. As I returned to my academic life, I carried with me the lessons of the Wendigo. I continued to study and document folklore, but with a newfound respect for the power of these ancient stories. They were not just tales, but warnings and reflections of our own humanity. The forest of northern Minnesota still holds the memory of that cold, terrifying winter. The Wendigo remains a guardian of its secrets, a creature of the night that reminds us of the thin line between civilization and the wild. And as the cold winds blow, I remember the fear and awe of facing the Wendigo, and the enduring power of our legends. My name is Claire Davenport, and I am a freelance journalist specializing in the unexplained and supernatural. I've always been drawn to the mysteries that exist on the fringes of sociohistories of ghosts, cryptids, and otherworldly phenomena that defy rational explanation. One legend that has long fascinated me is that of the Jersey Devil, a creature said to haunt the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Over the years, I had heard numerous accounts of sightings and encounters. But it wasn't until the fall of 2023 that I decided to investigate for myself. The legend of the Jersey Devil dates back to the 18th century. According to folklore, the creature was the 13th child of a woman named Deborah Leeds, who cursed it out of frustration. Born as a deformed monster with wings, hooves, and a forked tail, it supposedly flew out of the chimney and disappeared into the Pine Barrens, where it has been seen ever since. I arrived in the small town of Leeds Point, near the heart of the Pine Barrens, with my camera equipment and a sense of eager anticipation. The locals were friendly but guarded, their skepticism about my quest evident. "You won't find anything out there," an old man at the diner warned me. The Jersey Devil is just a story we tell to scare the kids. Undeterred, I set up camp at a remote spot in the forest. The pine barrens were both beautiful and eerie, with dense woods that seemed to swallow the light. As night fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. I felt a mixture of excitement and unease, wondering if I would encounter the legendary beast. The first few nights were uneventful. I spent my days exploring the forest and interviewing locals who claimed to have seen the Jersey Devil. Their stories varied, but a common theme was the creature's blood-curdling scream and its ability to move swiftly through the trees. Despite their differing accounts, they all spoke with the conviction that sent shivers down my spine. One evening, as I was reviewing my notes by the campfire, I heard a distant scream. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, a high-pitched, almost human wail that echoed through the trees. My heart raced as I grabbed my camera and flashlight, heading in the direction of the sound. The forest was dark and foreboding, flashlight casting long, wavering shadows. I moved cautiously, every rustle and snap of a twig heightening my senses. The scream came again, closer this time, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was getting closer. Suddenly, my flashlight beam caught a glimpse of something moving in the underbrush. I stopped, holding my breath. The creature stepped into view, and I felt a wave of fear and awe wash over me. It was tall, with leathery wings and glowing red eyes. Its body was covered in coarse, dark fur, and its face was a grotesque mix of human and animal features. The Jersey Devil. I raised my camera and snapped a few photos, my hands trembling. The creature let out another ear-piercing scream and took to the air, its wings beating the air with incredible force. I watched in stunned silence as it disappeared into the night sky, leaving me alone in the dark, silent forest. I returned to my camp, my mind reeling from what I had just witnessed. Reviewing the photos, I saw that I had captured clear images of the creature. I knew I had to share my findings, but I also understood the gravity of what this meant. The Jersey Devil was real, and its existence would challenge everything we knew about the natural world. The next morning, I packed up my camp and headed back to Leeds Point. I shared my photos and story with the local authorities and the media. The response was overwhelming. Skeptic and believers alike were captivated by the evidence. The town of Leeds Point became the center of a media frenzy, with reporters and researchers flocking to the Pine Barrens in search of the elusive creature. As for me, the encounter with the Jersey Devil changed my life. It validated my passion for the unexplained and solidified my belief that there are still mysteries in this world waiting to be uncovered. I continued my work as a journalist, delving deeper into the realms of the supernatural and unexplained. But the Pine Barrens held a special place in my heart. I returned often, drawn by the allure of the unknown and the memory of that fateful night. The forest remained as enigmatic as ever, its dark secrets hidden beneath the canopy of ancient trees. The legend of the Jersey Devil endured, a testament to the power of folklore and the human imagination. Whether it was a product of fear, misunderstood creature, or something beyond our comprehension, the Jersey Devil remains a symbol of the mysteries that still linger in the shadows of our world. And as I continue my journey into the unknown, I hold onto the belief that some legends are more than just stories. They are windows into the deeper truths that lie just beyond our understanding. My name is Marco Reyes, and I am a veterinarian living in a small town in Puerto Rico. I've always loved animals and dedicated my life to their care and well-being. However, nothing could have prepared me for the horrifying events that transpired in the summer of 2022. Events that brought me face to face with a creature I once thought to be pure myth, the chupacabra. It all started with a series of mysterious livestock deaths in the surrounding rural areas. Farmers were finding their goats, chickens, and even cows dead in the morning, their bodies drained of blood with 2 puncture wounds on their necks. The local media began to stir up panic, referring to the legend of the chupacabra, a creature said to suck the blood of livestock. I was skeptical, of course. As a man of science, I attributed these deaths to more plausible explanations, perhaps a rabid animal, or a series of cruel pranks. Nevertheless, the townspeople were frightened, and the local authorities were desperate for answers. That's when they turned to me, hoping that my expertise could shed some light on the situation. I began my investigation by examining the dead animals. The puncture wounds were unlike any I had seen before, too clean and precise for a typical predator. The bodies were completely exsanguinated, as if something had siphoned the blood directly. My curiosity was piqued, and I decided to set up surveillance cameras around several farms to catch the culprit in action. For several nights, I stayed up late, reviewing the footage. Most nights were uneventful, showing only the usual nocturnal activity of the countryside. But on the fifth night, I captured something that sent chills down my spine. The grainy footage showed a small, hunched figure creeping into the pen of a local farmer's goats. The creature moved with an unnatural grace, its eyes glowing in the infrared light of the camera. It approached one of the goats and, with terrifying speed, latched onto its neck, draining it of blood in seconds. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The creature matched the descriptions I had heard of the chupacabra, hairless, with spines running down its back. It was both fascinating and horrifying. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I decided to track the creature to its lair. Equipped with tranquilizer darts and a strong resolve, I ventured into the dense forest near the farms. The forest was thick and oppressive, filled with the sounds of nocturnal wildlife. The further I went, the more the atmosphere seemed to change, as if the forest itself was warning me to turn back. But I pressed on, guided by a mix of scientific curiosity and a desire to protect my community. After hours of trekking through the underbrush, I stumbled upon a cave entrance hidden behind a thicket. The ground around the cave was littered with bones, both animal and human. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized I had found the chupacabra's lair. Taking a deep breath, I entered the cave, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls were covered in strange, ancient markings. As I ventured deeper, I heard the unmistakable sound of movement claws scraping against stone. The chupacabra emerged from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with a predatory intelligence. It was smaller than I had imagined, but its presence was overwhelming. I raised my tranquilizer gun, aiming for the creature. It hissed, baring its fangs, and lunged at me. I fired a dart, hitting the chupacabra in the shoulder. It stumbled, then collapsed, its body twitching as the tranquilizer took effect. I cautiously approached the creature, my hands shaking. Up close, it looked even more otherworldly, its skin covered in scales and its teeth razor sharp. With the chupacabra subdued, I took the opportunity to document the creature, taking photographs and samples. This was a discovery that could change everything we knew about cryptids and the natural world. I carefully transported the chupacabra back to my clinic, where I secured it in a reinforced enclosure. Over the next few days, I studied the chupacabra, learning more about its physiology and behavior. It was an extraordinary creature, unlike anything I had ever encountered. I shared my findings with a select group of colleagues, who were equally astounded. The implications of this discovery were profound, raising questions about the existence of other cryptids and the boundaries of science. As news of my capture spread, the town's fear turned to curiosity and wonder. The chupacabra became a symbol of our small town, attracting researchers and enthusiasts from around the world. I ensured that the creature was treated humanely, continuing my studies while maintaining the highest ethical standards. The experience changed me. It reaffirmed my belief in the mysteries that still exist in our world, and the importance of approaching the unknown with both skepticism and an open mind. The legend of the chupacabra was no longer just a story, it was a reality that I had confronted and survived. In the years that followed, I continued my work as a veterinarian. But my encounter with the chupacabra remained a defining moment in my life. It reminded me that the world is full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and that sometimes, the truth can be stranger than fiction. The chupacabra is now a part of our community's history, a reminder of the thin line between myth and reality. And as I look back on that summer, I feel a sense of pride and awe at having faced the unknown and uncovered one of the greatest mysteries of our time.